Welcome to the Dig Endurance Podcast, where we are all about digging deep and discovering the power of emotional resilience. I'm Aaron, and I'm joined by my brother, Sean.
As endurance athletes and business owners, we have learned a thing or two about facing and overcoming adversity. We are here to share inspiring stories from our guests that will help you to find that inner strength when you feel like you are running on empty.
Are you ready? Let's dig in.
Welcome back to the Dig Endurance Podcast today, everyone. We have a special guest, Annie Parker. Annie, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Annie.
Thanks for having me on.
We're pumped to chat. We're going to chat addiction. We are going to chat about your situation. We definitely want to hear your story. I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions. And I think the best part about today is, seeing a unique situation in the addiction world where we can realize that each individual has a lot of decisions to make and they're impactful, but they're yours and they're yours to build on and they're yours to grow with. And I think your story it's great. I mean, that's why we wanted to have you on today. So if you could, give us a little bit of background, born, raised, where you're from, what your family's like, anything you want to share. And then, go ahead and lead us into what you're doing nowadays, and let's get chatting.
Okay, sure. So I'm Annie Parker. I'm first and foremost a mom of two. I have an older son who's 15 and a younger one who's 12. They are Evan and Wyatt, and they are why I'm here doing what I'm doing. In fact, if I did not have them, I probably would not be sitting here today. And we can get into that a little bit more later. But I was born in Texas. And into a military family, and we moved all around. I lived in Germany, I lived in on Okinawa in Japan, and then we landed in the Midwest at Scott Air Force Base, and this is where we stayed. So cool. I'm an educator by day. I teach third grade. It's my 20th year, which makes me feel really old when I say that.
Wow.
Yeah, we live in a small town in Illinois, and as much as I enjoy my summer break, I am looking forward to getting back into the classroom next week.
Always like that, kids.
And into a routine and get started with that. So I think my heart is just always with educating people, and so I educate little 8-year-olds all the way up to 99-year-olds who are struggling with addiction in their family, and so I tell my story, I talk to people, I support people, I give people a safe space to be vulnerable, and I am hoping that the butterfly effect will be big, and that my husband, who I lost in 2020 to alcoholism, did not die in vain, that I hope that he's here with me in some way, helping to just put families in a situation where they can feel not so alone, not so isolated, and that they have decisions to make, that their lives can get better.
Well, I think all those things are good things. So
I hope so.
Wonderful things. I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah. So my journey with addiction actually did not start with my husband. It started with my sister, who is a struggling substance abuser, alcohol, and other drugs. That started when I was a teenager. So I found out really quickly that addiction is a family disease. When I lost my parents and my sister at the same time, my parents became obsessed with fixing her. And we all know that's not a thing that we can do for each other. So fast forward into my 20s, and I married a man who I did not know was an alcoholic, but looking back on it now, he was. He was when we got married. And you would think that all the experiences that I had as the sister of an alcoholic and drug addict, I would have seen the red flags, I would have known better, I would have chosen better, and I just didn't see them because it was different. Addiction does not look the same on people.
No.
He was, I guess, what everybody terms as a functioning alcoholic. I know it's kind of like a term that we sometimes use and some people don't like it, but really he was. He was present. He was outgoing, the life of the party, happy, a great father. He worked hard. until he couldn't anymore.
Mm.
And we had been through it all together. We were married for 10 years. We went through long-term detox and rehabilitation stints, hospitalizations, seizures, hallucinations, you name it, we experienced it. So as his disease progressed, I found myself as the spouse of an alcoholic really struggling. And I was the stereotypical screamy wife that was, why are you doing this to us? If you could get your shit together, everything would be fine. And that's just not the truth. He was not the one creating chaos in the home. I was. So I realized that I needed to change my life when I found myself standing next to train tracks on my Sunday morning walk and just really having a hard time holding my back from stepping in front of the train. So that week I asked my husband to leave our marital home, unsure of what the plan was. He went to live with his father and I just needed to breathe. So I started Al-Anon at that time. I've been in Al-Anon for 3 years now, even though my husband passed in 2020. And he didn't get better. And fast forward through COVID, where I was single parenting, teaching from home, his alcoholism got even worse. I filed for divorce and he died during an unsupervised detox 45 days later. So
unsupervised in his house?
Yes.
At home?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Were you working as an educator during all this time also?
Yes, working actually 3 jobs. I worked as an educator and then I worked 2 part-time jobs from home that were writing jobs because my husband lost his job and our health insurance and I had to keep our family in our home.
That's a lot. And then you said in 2020.
Yeah.
So was this early when COVID first set on, or was this later in 2020? And did COVID exacerbate, or was it part of the challenge that you'd already been going through? Did that add to it?
Absolutely. I mean, COVID was awful for so many reasons, but even the statistics that I've read, I wrote a book and I did a lot of research. COVID was awful for substance abuse and
terrible.
Yeah, so he was isolated. He did feel alone. I talked to him every day. It's hard when you're divorced because people assume that means you hate each other, you don't talk to each other, you're completely separated.
Right.
Divorce was different. It was to save myself and our children. I loved my husband. I still love my husband. I tried really hard to support him without enabling, even when he was no longer in our home. Mm-hmm. But he died on July 2nd, 2020. His official death certificate said a heart attack due to prolonged use of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And so when I come on to any podcast or if I tell my story, I've talked at Alcathon and women's recovery groups. I tell our story as much as possible. I always say, if somebody is detoxing from alcohol, you probably actually need to give them alcohol and then get them to a safe place to detox.
Absolutely.
Alcoholism is one of the only 2 detoxes that can kill somebody.
It's so dangerous.
Yeah, they all feel like super gnarly and you get really sick no matter what you're detoxing from, but a lot of people die during detox from alcohol.
I mean, I work directly with multiple very reputable residential facilities, and every time it's make sure they are not just cutting everything off. Like if it has to be a few drinks, whatever it is, don't even go down there. And of course I know that, but it's crystal clear how dangerous it is, especially with your heart. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah. So I carry a lot of guilt about that because he was not in my home at that time. I knew he wasn't feeling well. His skin was turning yellow, his eyes, and he was swelling up. I had talked to him every day. I went and sat with him the day before. So I called him and I said, how are you doing today? And he's like, I just don't feel well. I called his dad and said he needs to go to the hospital. I think he's detoxing or something is going on. And his dad didn't take him and I didn't take him. So I've got some guilt about that. But I have to remember that I couldn't have saved him anyway. I think he was going to die either way. And during COVID, if you guys remember, it was really difficult to get into a hospital. He would have had to walk himself in there, all the things, and then he would have sat there alone. And you know, there's all of this what ifs. What if I had taken him? Was it my job to take him? Again, we were no longer married. I talked to his dad. I said, you need to take him. So it's difficult. It's really hard. So I've been blamed a lot for my husband's death. I've been blamed for his alcoholism. And that's where my Instagram handle comes from. I did not kill my husband.
I love it.
and the title of my
that.
So
I remember seeing that and I was like, what is this? And then I just went down like a 5-minute rabbit hole and I was like, this is interesting. This is like the same situation, but it's different. That was where it started.
How long into the marriage? So 10 years married.
mhm.
And how much of that time would you say then was spent, you know, battling the alcohol addiction? I mean, from day one, or when did that clock really start where you were like, okay, this is something's going on? Yeah. When did that?
So that started, when you first get with somebody, you go out, you have a good time, you drink, whatever. When I was pregnant with my son and I stopped socially drinking and he did not, I started, because he was drinking every night and he wasn't going out, he was staying home. But my first clue was I was finding vodka bottles in random places around the house.
Oh.
And I thought, this is not normal. But still, so that was about 2 years into our marriage. And then, he had a seizure one day. He kept getting in car accidents. He lost his job. I didn't know why. When he had his seizure, he got hospitalized. And from what I know now, but did not know at the time, he started detoxing and hallucinating really bad. Like he was running out of the hospital with his gown on, thinking the building was on fire and all sorts of scary things. And not one medical professional told me what was going on. I had to do my own research. And that's how I found out my husband was an alcoholic.
So initially, and understandably, we've been through our own part of this within our family too. A lot of frustration. Sounds like you were saying, raise voices. Why can't you fix yourself? Why can't you get it together? At what point did you realize, was it on your own, or did you finally seek some type of help, or, where you were like, I need to take a different approach if we're going to try to figure this out? And was there ever, ultimately, obviously, he passed, and we'll talk statistics and some things shortly, because unfortunately it's not uncommon where people are battling such things. But did you have some degree of, success? Did you see some progress ever that you guys made as you tried, different, approaches, trying to work through it? I know eventually you decided that divorce is the way you needed to go, but can you speak to some of the ways that you tried to cope with that and work on that, and what didn't work, what did work? Any little victories you had along the way, or where you felt like you were able to adapt or, make it work? And maybe the answer is no, and that's okay. I'm just kind of curious what that looked like for you.
Sure. Yeah. So the moment where I was literally just on a Sunday morning walk, which I took every Sunday morning, where I almost jumped in front of a moving train, without, it's not something I planned. I didn't walk out there to try to do that, but it just was like the train was coming and I was bawling on my walk because everything was out of control. And I felt so angry and scared and isolated and exhausted because I was doing everything on my own and just lost and completely out of control. And I thought, man, that would be nice to not have to feel any of this stuff anymore. So literally I held myself back from that because I have 2 children and I knew they needed me if I could get my shit together, because I was not my best mom self. And I knew that I had to do something for me and that I could not fix him or change the situation. So I had a therapist at the time, and I told her what happened, and she said, "You need Al-Anon." And I was like, "I don't need Al-Anon. I don't have a problem. He has a problem. I have you." And she said, "You need both." And I learned very quickly in Al-Anon that we take responsibility for our part in the situation, that we only can control ourselves. And that program is very near and dear to my heart. That program helped to save my life, and it has made me a better mother, teacher, partner, friend, human. And I've just been able to release control over everything.
So is Al-Anon available to everyone? Just for people listening that may not know what Al-Anon is.
Sure. Al-Anon is like a 12-step program for family members of alcoholics. We take the same 12 steps as AA. We focus on ourselves and we learn about alcoholism from our perspective. It's a great place for support. A couple things. The first meeting I tried, I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. I'm never going back. My therapist said, try another one. And we just kind of say, try 6 meetings, even if they're different meetings. And if it doesn't work for you, we will gladly refund you your misery. So keep trying because you will find your right group. And I will say, recovery ebbs and flows. When I first was going through this, man, I hit every meeting I could. It was the only place I could go where I felt sane and normal and hopeful. And now as I'm 3 years into this, I still go to weekly meetings most of the time. But I do other things as well. When I first started my recovery, you guys, literally, I was like, I have to drink water and I have to eat food. Like I was not even drinking water or eating food. I wasn't sleeping. I called my doctor and got put on medication to help me sleep. Yeah. And so you just start with those small things and then it starts to build into this whole recovery process, right? Sure. My husband was not doing that. He pretended to go to therapy. He pretended to go to AA instead of actually going to those things. He would go drinking or he'd go, but wasn't really there or wasn't really putting the effort in. And I always talk about that too when I come on and talk to people because it's scary for somebody to say, alcoholism killed my husband. It is scary for people to hear that. But people can recover if they're willing to put the effort in. My husband was not. And I don't know why he wasn't. I don't know why he wasn't willing. So
there's a couple I appreciate, it's interesting. It takes a great deal of obviously like vulnerability and courage to throw this kind of a story out there. And yeah, some people would view it as taboo. Sean and I are in the same vein as you. I think the open and honest discussions are always the most helpful. We've talked about not watering down feedback here on this podcast. I believe that's very important. I believe real, true feedback and real, true storytelling and being open and honest is what yields results and change. What I appreciate that you said is, as you were getting into Al-Anon, is that you were part of the, of the problem or the struggle. Not that necessarily that was going to, fix your husband's problem. And ultimately it didn't, but like I have had, people close to me. So for example, with marital issues and that, they've been fighting on and off or, certain things going on. And all of a sudden, one spouse cheats on the other and then the other spouse is just up in arms. How could you do this to us? It's just instant finger pointing and I'm the victim. He cheated on me. But there's no degree of, hey, maybe I did play some part in driving my spouse to look for look somewhere else. And listen, not that I'm justifying, I'm not advocating that anyone cheat on their spouse. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is it is a partnership. It is a marriage, and it does take some degree of self-examination to say, what can I do differently? And I'm not talking just alcoholism. I'm talking in various aspects. And I do think that, frankly, a lot of people aren't willing to do what you did. I think in these situations where alcoholism is involved, they just say, hey, it's plain and simple. He drinks, we have problems. and that's it. And I'm not the problem here. And I think it took probably a great deal of humility for you to say, hey, even though he's got problems and is making something stressful, I have to self-examine and see what I can do to change and improve and make things better. I think that's a huge missing step in alcohol battles with couples in particular, where people just look at it black and white. No, he's the alcoholic or she's the alcoholic. There's nothing for me to fix here. It's really just on them. So I think that you highlighting that, mentioning that is big, because I think a lot of people are not willing to admit at all or even recognize that they're part or have some role to play in what their spouse's, challenges may be. So I just think that that's, a big thing to highlight for some people. And it takes a great deal of humility to do what you did there.
It takes a lot of work behind the scenes. And I'm curious, when you're educating yourself and making all of this progress, even hearing your story, I cannot emphasize enough to people that are listening the amount of stress and exhaustion and chaos that all is still going on while you're trying to better yourself, while you're trying to look in the mirror, while you're trying to ignore social feedback, family members' feedback. It's nonstop. It just is. How and what did you do when you started educating yourself, when you started taking pieces from Al-Anon, therapy, stuff like that? I mean, when were you like, this is the path I'm supposed to be walking? I am getting puzzle pieces and putting this together. Like, when did that click? Because, a lot of people that I've worked with, they'll explain that to me and just say, hey, this is where I'm at. I kind of get this now. Like, when a challenge comes my way, instead of me operating or thinking a certain way, it's almost like a natural thought of, oh, this is another piece of the puzzle I need to throw together, versus like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. What did that look like for you? How did you push through, let's just call it noise. And it is noise. It's constant, nonstop noise, feedback, opinions. How did you get through that?
So originally, I always talk about how we were in a recovery bubble, my kids and I. It was, and COVID actually helped me do that, because I could easily say no to anybody who wanted my time and energy.
It's true.
So we're staying home.
Yep.
So
that works.
It didn't click for me right away, because like when you're in the moment of it and you're in the trenches and you're like, gosh, I'm so tired and I'm putting all this work in, and he's still up at night throwing up with his anxiety, and he's still so angry, and I can't get him to go to school, and I'm like overwhelmed. But then eventually something happens and you think, whoa, I handled that well. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. He didn't throw up last night.
Ding.
My son, has super high anxiety. He goes to therapy, NET, all these things. And I see progress in them, and the progress that I see in my kids, and how I can calmly handle situations now.
That is great that you do that. That's great.
That's my progress monitor. It's not in the everyday moments. It's when you look back and you think, okay, we're doing much better now. And we still work hard. I mean, between me going to Al-Anon in therapy, the kids both in therapy, my partner in therapy and Al-Anon, and NET, which is at the chiropractor, and 504 meetings at school, man, we are in recovery for 5 to 8 hours a week. And this is 3 years later.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's what we need. It's working. It won't always be this way. My kids are preteen and teenage years, so I only have a few more years where I do have some parenting control, and I just want to give them the best opportunity possible to have healthy coping skills.
I like how she said some parenting control.
We never
have more than
some.
some.
I have to go, because we have to go.
We got 9 kids between us, so
some parenting control is the right way. It's the right way to say it.
So let me ask you this: did you ever struggle with? I know for you, it's like an individual choice. Like, the work needs to happen. Was it a struggle to put your kids in therapy? Was it a challenge at all? Like, what was your thought on that? Because I've come across both sides of that coin.
Yes.
Where it's like they're my kids. They don't need it. I'll go. My kids don't need it.
Yeah. Were they resistant at all to the idea either?
Nope. It's never been difficult for me. And I started them young enough to where it's always been a part of their life. I get a lot of that. How do you get your teenagers to go? Oh, well, he's been going already for 6 or 7 years. It's part of his life. My 15-year-old sometimes goes to Al-Anon with me. We prioritize our recovery. We communicate with each other. We talk to each other. Just the other night, I had I exploded because our dog peed in the teenager's bed right before we were going to sleep. And we had an early morning with surgery. So I was like stomping around and yelling, and I had to turn around the next morning and make amends to my kids. Like, I am so sorry. I was a hot mess last night. We talk about these things and we don't expect perfection, but it takes a lot of work.
A lot.
Yes.
A lot.
What has been difficult for me, though, is my youngest son has really high anxiety. Talking about putting him on medication, that has been difficult for me. So I understand that. Like, I'm an educator by day. I know it's hard to hear that something is wrong with your child. But if we ignore that, we can't help them. And statistics tell me that my kids need help. They need help now, and they're going to need help as adults. But once they're adults, that help is on them. It's not on me.
I mean, that's kind of why I was asking what you just said. There's something wrong with my child. It's like I've ran into so many situations where I'm like, well, listen, like the medication thing, that's a great example. You don't have to jump right in. You can put in some work before. You can build out a path, right? And take steps to get to the point where maybe it's a need. You never know. But a lot of parents, me included, struggle with that. That's, providing help one way or another. Therapy is so stigmatized. People may disagree with this. It is so stigmatized in my eyes.
Absolutely.
It is, I go to therapy every week, period. And I probably will forever. I don't even know. And then I have a separate therapy session just for having to work with my brother every day. Just kidding. So, you know what? Some of my therapy sessions they're just chats and they're great. And I process a few things or whatever. Aaron here holds meetings all the time. Sometimes the meetings are like, oh, we repeated that last week, but we all learned something and we moved on and things are organized and they flow well. It's like a work meeting. It's, I go in, things flow, I chat.
And it's okay for it to be a check-in. Sometimes therapy just needs to be a check-in and some accountability. It's
fantastic. I mean, it's like, if it's no different than going to the gym, it really is. I can't emphasize that.
It's just knowing that you have somebody in your corner. I always say, if your child or children are growing up in a home where there's active alcoholism, active addiction, active mental health, they're living in childhood trauma, period.
Totally. Yep.
And it's hard for me to say my kids grew up in childhood trauma. I'm an educator. I have a master's degree. My husband had a master's degree. We have a beautiful home. It's so stigmatized. It doesn't care who you are or what you do.
And this is where I have to interject, because I have to force this conversation as part of this podcast today, because your situation applies very much to it, and that is, this was the pandemic before the pandemic. Mental health is the real pandemic.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna be frank. COVID. I have so much to say about COVID, and we've only got a few minutes, but there are so many Parker families that already faced mental and behavioral health challenges as part of this already ongoing pandemic that we face throughout the world.
Yeah.
And when we unreasonably and stupidly knee-jerk reactioned to COVID the way we did, all in the name of saving lives, we actually ironically exacerbated so many other existing problems. Us three who live and breathe behavioral mental health every day and deal with these things, not only personally, but also professionally. Even as an educator, I'm sure you navigate into mental and behavioral health waters quite often. I know because we collaborate with them all the time. The news media and all these other people all the focus was on the numbers of cases and, oh my gosh, are we at least bringing those down, and no one else is getting sick, and all the numbers you see are deaths on hospital beds from COVID itself. No one wanted to look at the depression cases that went up during that time. No one wanted to look at the suicides that went up during that time. No one wanted to look at the number of deaths from alcoholism that went up during that time. No one wanted to look at the number of cases of abuse that went up during that time. Oh, and I could go on and on and on.
Children not being able to eat because they weren't going to school, all of it.
It's sick. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's behind us now. I mean, there's no doing a do-over, but make no mistake, the way that we handled that whole situation as people, maybe we did some good. Maybe, I don't even know, on the COVID front with doing the whole, tracing and trying to social distance. I still would argue that a lot of that didn't really work or matter. But one thing for sure we did, that the true pandemic that already existed before COVID, we made it worse.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and say that your husband, you know what, maybe he did, get better, if not for COVID, but maybe not. Maybe he still in the end might have passed. But you know what? Like, I am confident that there are many cases where people might have and could have been better, where COVID was just the final nail in the coffin, because it exacerbated it. It removed familial contact. It removed, socializing. It removed normal interaction. It removed people's outlets for work, for recreation. It removed so many things. And hey, cool, we saved a couple COVID deaths, but Annie, what does that real number look like of all these other deaths that we might have caused on the mental health front due to COVID? We'll never know. We'll never know.
I mean,
and that bothers me, as you can tell. That one matters to me.
We have an adolescent program here. A lot of the cases were non-existent before. It's sad. It's sad to see.
Yeah.
We do our best. We do our best.
What had down during COVID though was AA and Al-Anon, man, they pulled through. They were continuing their meetings.
They were going.
Threw up, Zoom meetings like immediately. We did not miss a week. And so there's a lot to be said about that, because the people that know how much it matters to have those meetings and to have community and have support and to not be isolated with our problems, they showed up and they
1,000%.
did. So.
Well, and same for us. I mean, we live in California, so I don't think I need to say anything else about how COVID was handled here. We do applied behavior analysis and mental health, services. Closing was never an option. We never even discussed that. That was never an option on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Where we had tons of behavioral health providers around us that closed their doors, started offering versions of teletherapy. I don't know if you know anything about ABA. Actually, you probably do, because you probably have paraprofessionals in your classroom that maybe you've seen or worked with. If you're working with kids with autism or ADHD, teletherapy for 5 minutes, yeah, good luck. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
It's not effective. It's not going to do the job. Maybe some supervision can be done, but ultimately the one-to-one, there's no way. And we had parents literally in tears who were just so scared we were going to close. I mean, imagine already having to have your childcare situation and you're, going to work or whatever, and that being taken away. But imagine you've got one or two or three kids in ABA therapy. That's your childcare, and this is your autistic child or your child with behavioral issues, and this is the help they get. And imagine that's taken away, and all of a sudden you have nowhere to take them, but also you now have to care for them, and you're not skilled or trained into how to handle your autistic child or your child with ADHD. And it's hard. It's a lot. And so our families were so grateful, that we were able to just stay open and keep figuring it out. But unfortunately, so that's great. You were able to keep going to your meetings, in our situation, we were able to keep providing services. But unfortunately, I think a lot of other organizations out there didn't arrive at that same conclusion. And a lot of people's services discontinued or were on hold during that time. But I'm glad to hear that yours weren't.
I have have kind of a final question where I want some either feedback or some advice for people that are listening. I'm familiar with trauma that is caused or that the children experience within this situation that you're describing. I've been the cause of it myself. On my side, ego kicks in. You don't want to hear that you are responsible for any type of damage to your own children, your biological children. It doesn't mean that you can't work through it. It doesn't mean that work can't be done, and it's work. It's beyond work. I mean, talk about, for me personally, you know, the ego comes out to play, right? It's a lot of work. That's all I'm going to say. In your situation, we know you love your husband. We know you still love him, and that you represent him in nothing but support and to serve others, to help others learn how they can make decisions and develop paths for themselves. How do you think others can learn or even find resources, whether their partner is still living with them or whether they're divorced, but they want to find some sort of way to create a path that works for the children to get through the trauma, no matter what path they're on or no matter what they're going through? Because I think that is a very underplayed card. I think that was a lot of the work I had to put in, and because you can put in individual work, people can go to therapy, this, that, and the children kind of just, they start to trust again and build up. But how important is that trauma portion for the children?
Yeah, for me, that's everything. I saw my children suffering because I didn't care about myself. I whatever. But when you see your children suffering, you think, oh my gosh, I have to do something. And I'm the safe parent. I'm the healthy parent. I'm the one that has to do it. I have to make all the decisions, the hard ones included. If I had advice for people, I have a couple things. One, educate yourself. Learn about addiction and stop just assuming you know about it, and actually find facts and learn about it. What is happening to your spouse? What is happening to you and your children? Another thing I would say is think of what you can control. What is within my control? I cannot stop him from drinking and driving, but I can stop him from putting my kids in the car when he does that. The hardest part for me, I'm a controller. I like to control things because like if you do it my way, it's the right way. I'm that type of person. And I've had to really let that go because that just keeps me sick. It just keeps me angry at everybody for not doing the things the way that I want them to do it. And now that I know that I can't tell him 5 million times, do not drink and drive, it's dangerous, he's going to do that if he wants to. But what did I have within my control? I could have him not drive the kids around anymore. And yeah, that sucks for me because now I'm going to this soccer practice over here and this soccer practice over here and calling and asking people for help. But that's just what it is. For our situation specifically, the one thing that I needed to control that a lot of people struggle with is I needed him to be removed from my home. I needed space, and I didn't know what that meant. I did not know if that meant that's what he needs to get better, and then we can come back together and try this again. But I knew that I needed that space. I needed to work on myself. I needed to parent our children differently. And since I was the healthy parent, I needed to be the one to make those decisions. I also like to talk about blame. A lot of blamers and shamers come out. His family came at me hard. You divorced him. You gave up on him when he needed you the most. You didn't tell me how bad it was. I could have fixed it. I could have helped, all the things. And I've had to put up big, big boundaries and not let that take me down because I have one goal, and that is for serenity for my family. And I guess 2 goals, giving them the coping skills that they need because they've grown up in trauma. They have a dead father, and they're going to be genetically adults who might be prone to alcoholism themselves. So here I am talking about that. And that's why my handle is I did not kill my husband, because of all the blamers and shamers. So.
Well, and to the blamers and shamers and naysayers, what do you say to them when they for critiquing your transparency or your being candid about your journey. What is your rebuttal to that?
My rebuttal is deleting their comments and blocking them, because I don't
Yeah,
I don't have time or energy really to try
No
to
need.
And
like if you haven't experienced it, you don't understand it, and you can't, and that's fine, but you also shouldn't be commenting on it. I cannot tell you, you guys, I have gone viral 2 times this summer. I went from 5,000 followers to 20,000 followers in the course of the month, and I have heard it all. I am a murderer. I did kill my husband. I'm the biggest narcissist. I gave up on him. I pulled the trigger. I mean, all the things. And still, I would go back and make the same decisions that I made, because really what I would want to tell people, if they would listen, those naysayers wouldn't listen, is that if he was
I agree with that.
if he was sick enough to die 45 days after our divorce, he was going to die anyway. And maybe I saved him from dying in our home in front of our children or in front of me. And that would have been so much worse than the way that it happened. I could not save my husband. I wish I could have. I would have done anything to do so, but I had to save myself and I had to save our children. And I'm telling you guys, I know that he's proud of me. He's proud of our kids. He knows that I did the right thing, and he's standing with me and in solidarity and in support. And no matter what anybody says to me, they can't take that from me.
I think anyone who talks with you can see that you're comfortable and forthright in taking your own accountability in the situation. I don't think you hide from that at all.
Yeah.
And I think that you're comfortable acknowledging. I certainly don't sit here and listen to you and think, man, she's just bagging on her husband. It's just like, hey, here's the circumstances. He's made some mistakes. There's mistakes I made. Here's our family situation. Here's what we tried. I mean, I myself was on the train tracks. I mean, there's a lot you shared here. I mean, that pertains to a lot of, again, vulnerability, a lot of difficult things that you as a family were going through. And I agree with what you said. I think that ultimately naysayers, unfortunately, this is how we are as people. And Sean and I have to talk about this before. They don't want to hear what you have to say. Naysayers really just are that for most of their lives. They're naysayers. That's what they do. They say nay all the time. But the only thing, in my experience, and I truly believe that yields real results, is actual transparency. People who want to sugarcoat or be shielded from it do not want to make the hard changes to be better. And they want to try to shield or stop those difficult conversations because it ultimately holds them accountable to something different. And most people don't want that. But we shouldn't let what most people want, which is wrong, stop the few of us from having the hard conversations that want to have a change. Like what you've said, this is for your kids. So are the hard conversations not worth having so your 2 boys can have a safe, secure, and hopefully different future? I think so. My answer is yes. I mean, I'd say that for my own kids. And you know what? If anyone else's answer is no to that, then I'm with you. Bye. No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I only have so much energy. I am a mom. I am a teacher. I'm trying to support people online. I've got a lot going on. We play sports. We are in band. We're doing all the things. And it's like, I only have so much energy, but my energy is going to go towards people that really need my help and support, and to my children. And anybody else, you're a waste of my time, delete, block. And because I don't want anybody else to be like reading their nasty comments thinking, oh, maybe I am going to kill my husband if I ask him to leave. Like, I don't need that. That's not what my page is for. I always think if you're not here for education or support or solidarity, scroll on, because I don't care how many people follow me. Instagram does not pay me. People are there all the time. You're making money off your husband's death. I'm like, how? Like, I work 3 jobs. What are you talking about?
I would like to know where the money's going, please.
I mean, it's not like you're selling shirts that say I did not kill my husband. I mean, but yeah.
Right. So nobody would.
That's never going to change. I mean, that's why we brought you on today. Is I think your perspective and the way you communicate it is beyond what people need to hear. It applies across the board, no matter what the results are or the factors before making decisions. It's educate yourself and figure out that it's your puzzle to put together.
There's no meaningful change without the hard conversations, without the full transparency. So kudos to you for doing it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Appreciate you coming on
today.
Yeah. Thanks, Annie.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you guys.
Hey, nice to meet you, Annie.
You
Thanks
too.
for coming on. And we'll, I think we'll have some tags and stuff. So feel free to share on if you so choose. And, maybe down the road too.
Follow up.
We'll follow up. I
feel like this.
if you ever want to come on again, we always are open to bring people back on in the future too. So we can stay in
For sure.
touch.
You guys are the most professional podcast I've ever been on, like with your microphones and your background. Like I've done a few and they've been really fun, but I can tell you guys are passionate about what you're doing.
We have a guy that does it for us.
This is Jake. He produces
He
them
comes
for
in
us.
and sets it up for us. And
Yeah, I wish I could take the credit for setting up the mics and making it all professional, but
It would
Jake
not be that
runs it
good.
for us.
Tag you in social media stories and stuff like that. So
Okay. Thanks. Yeah,
So,
I don't
Annie-
even know what social media is, so I guess when you tag me, I'll find out, right?
For sure. Well, enjoy the rest of your summer. Good luck with school starting again, and then look for some stuff here to drop in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
guys.
Annie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Annie.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good one.